Yes, I am Mark Roberts. I don't have a slide on who I am because I think that's really irrelevant. Um, what I care is you listen to the message, and I'm going to start with a little transformation here because I'm trying to convince security people to put on a different hat, change your style, right? So I'm wore jeans today intentionally, right? I got the Manny socks, wild socks, because this is about getting security people to understand the development world is different than security people. And we need to step over the line and live in their world. Talk their language, walk their walk, be comfortable, right, with them. Which means, I expect to wear a dress shirt and pants as a speaker, but I said, no, I need to be like a developer. I need to make this an object lesson. So it's very intentional in doing that, right? So this developer culture, as you might guess, heck, if you've seen a few people have mentioned it, culture is people, right? So I am deeply technical, believe it or not, but this is really a people issue. And you've heard that message through a number of the keynotes and others, right? There is that central thread about people. So this is all about, right? I'm actually going to share a deck with you that I use when reaching out to leaders and in development teams as well to go on a journey. So I'm going to share the deck to you as security people, understanding that a deck was not created for you, it's created for them. So you can see this is a technique. I'm trying to drive awareness and thinking and discussion, hopefully here at the end, especially, or maybe in the middle if you need to. But it's not to teach you things, it's to give you an expression of a potential way to go about this, right? So my goal is to get developers to start the journey towards being responsible and understanding how to get this developing secure software, right? A secure SDLC. Specifically, I'm going to give you techniques, which we'll go into. Don't need to go into that until we get there. Let's start with reality. Look at that number, 68 million. Think about that. This is a little while ago. I think it may have been early COVID, doesn't matter. So I just looked, jobs for burned out software engineers. I thought that really nails it, right? You understand what software developers are going through. This is not a walk in the park for them. The move to Agile, everything else, the faster and faster, DevSecOps, this is not easy. That's the first thing you have to understand, right? So I got to listen to a talk recently, and the CISO from Cisco was there as something Ford and some other car companies hosted. And the guy brought out these points. Security needs to be pragmatic, that is risk-focused, business-focused, doing what makes sense practically, right? Not living in a technical world, but looking implications for the business, what makes sense. Transparent, all parties, why, what motivates us, going back and forth, and compassionate, right? And that's a big part of what I'm about here. So think about those terms, stealing it from the Cisco CISO, which I had after I handed in this talk, got to see that. Think about that as you go. These are people that need compassion, right? It's a big problem. They have a big shortage of people too. How many times have people here heard about the shortage of people in security? Okay. How many times have security people talk about the shortage of developers? If you look, you might guess accurately that the shortage of developers for companies for software, because everything is becoming software, is much greater than security people. But you would not know that listening to other security people. We are so inwardly focused. That's why I'm doing this. I'm trying to change your minds and give you clues on how to change that in your organizations, right? So going ahead. First, two simple truths. We all know time is critical. It's especially critical for them. Just as critical as if somebody's breaking in and you're doing a detect and respond. For them, if you're first to market, it makes a huge difference, or second or third, right? What position you are in market could be the difference between does your company survive or does it fail? Does your next profit? I work for a car company, Ford. You can kind of guess that from my shirt, right? Is the car going to dominate, right? You've seen, how many times have you seen a car come out and then you see some other cars from the other ones, they look a lot like that first one, we kind of copy each other. I'm not saying we do, but you kind of look at it and say, which one do you think gets the market share? It's the first one, right? I always think of the PT Cruiser. Not a great car, but it really caught people's fancy. And then Chevy came out with the HHR. I mean, we all knew what that was, right? And do you think it never achieved what the other did. Forget about quality and the rest, right? So we need to think about that's what's driving the business. What drives the business divides the developers. And here's the rocket science note. Developers are working on software that helps the company make money. We don't, right? We only empower them to manage risk when they are directly contributing to the mission of the company. We are one step removed from that profit factor, right? We're cost avoidance a lot of times. We're worth it, but they are directly often tied to products, software products that are directly tied to what you produce, whether it's services, cars, machine, washing machines, doesn't matter. Okay. I talk about Agile here, right? Agile is great. Everybody understands that it sped up everything, but that just means we have more problems faster. And that's a reality. Our goal, working with developers to understand their world, which is they need to minimize risk. That requires education. They need to minimize unplanned work, which means we need to talk to them so they can build the requirements for security in along the way. Think shift left, but I don't like that word anymore. Many people reject it now. It's maybe grow left, maybe grow all directions, but the shift means take it from here and move it there. We don't get rid of the other stuff. We may manage it differently, but we certainly need to have more emphasis early on in the life cycle, right? And at the end of the day, I claim, and I know many of my peers claim, that really security needs to be viewed as just part of quality. If you're creating quality software, security, it just needs to be part of how you think about it. I've had to argue with some developers about that. They don't always agree, but it really is, right? If your software doesn't do what it's supposed to, that's not quality, right? If it does what it's supposed to, but takes 2 minutes for a screen refresh, performance, right? Well, that's not good software. Security, if it's not secure and you lose the customer's data, is that good software? No. To me, it's that simple, right? Anybody can understand it. Don't need technology thing. So there's a 2-step thing I go through with teams. So I'm gonna start with this. This is the warm up to let them know what I'm gonna talk about. Kind of like teaching, tell them what you can talk about, then you talk about it, then you refresh at the end. So we're gonna go through 6 things really quick. And these are aimed at them, helping them understand I know where they're coming from, why this is their fight, why I'm there to help them, right? Talk about current realities, things about the people, right? And we'll walk through each one of these. Let's point to look at it here in depth, right? So current realities, right? I'm going to say you look at DBIR every year. CrowdStrike has the great stuff. You don't need to read this, right? I'm just throwing it up there. You'll get a copy of the deck later if you want it. Growth in attacks on open source, on source as a whole, on infrastructure is only going up. Vulnerability overall are only going up. The trends are only one way for most things, and it's not better. And most of it, look at DBR, are still through like websites, still one of the biggest implementation details for hackers, right? Even if you steal credentials, you got to do something with them. The weaknesses you find, the vulnerabilities you find are in the software, usually on websites. It's still as DBI reports out, right? And there's a nice quote if you want to read it from Checkmarks. That's because if I distribute the slides, people need something to read. Going to move on. Reality. Developers haven't learned to secure code because it wasn't taught to them. It's not in educational programs as a requirement. I had an old quote there, but I listened to a guy 2 weeks ago. They literally walk across the top 200 colleges with a software engineer in the country, looked at all their curricula and saw, were there requirements for secure coding? The answer is nope. There's electives, that's the improvement. At least they have courses in many of them. They don't all have courses. So how do you expect software engineers to know how to do this? How do we test them on something, a course they never took? The classic dream sequence some adults are known to have. It turned out a lot of people in the United States have this dream, which is you wake up in a nightmare, oh my gosh, I have a final in 10 minutes. I didn't even know I signed up for the course. How am I going to pass it? Or I failed the final for a course I never knew I signed up for, right? It seems to be a recurring nightmare that people shortly after college have as adults, right? Think about that one. That's kind of what we're subjecting developers to, right? You look at their own recognizance. They know, right? 80% of the people have a degree of some sort. 70% of those people don't think they learned enough security. They haven't even entered the market and they already are doubting their capability, right? So something to think about. But let's also be realistic. The bad side, the bad people, right? They have great educational opportunities. I especially like this one, Hackertown, $125, like 100 pounds. Okay, there's inflation and it's ridiculous. So let's say 150 pounds, $200 now. I'm trying to be up to date. You don't just get a course in hacking, you get their whole college curriculum on how to turn you into a criminal. And it's not hacking for fun. Oh, look what I've done. No, it's getting money. The book, this is on Amazon, 10, 15 bucks, right? You go look at it. Hacking how to hack for beginners, sure. And it says, this is their own words, right? Have you ever wanted to hacker do cracking passwords and stealing data? This is right there for everybody. So you can guess. The bad people are increasing faster than we are. That is, the people know what to do. So what do we do? Peter Drucker, probably everybody's heard this before, right? If you're going to do anything and get better at it, you better have metrics. If you're not, if anybody here wants to be a better runner, who here would not actually time themselves and see how fast they run a race? It'd be ridiculous, right? So, okay, but how do you measure stuff? Especially, think about software development. How do you measure how many times you didn't do something wrong, which is what you want to happen? That's the positive effect. You can't. My analysis is the quickest way to understand this one, this is what I tell developers, I want to get healthier, so I'm going to try to measure how many cookies I don't eat each day. And you're saying, well, that's nonsense. It is. There's no way for me to measure how many times I didn't do something, right? There's no control there. So you have to measure to something. Well, I'm claiming we have a great maturity model out there. There's lots of them, but there's one called SAM, Software Assurance Maturity Model. And it is a way to understand application security across the entire SDLC, including an assessment, and we'll talk about that. By measuring to something positive, now you measure behaviors. And now you can look at a group of people from a whole organization down to a team, and we're going to talk about the team level. And if you measure two positive behaviors, then you know if they're doing most of the positive behaviors, they're likely in a good place. Their software is likely much more secure. That make sense? Everybody tracking with me? Okay. If you want a question, throw it out if you want. I mentioned this. How many people even are familiar with maturity models here? Ooh, most of you. For those who don't, you can look it up more, but basically it's CMM is the classic. It's a way of measuring expected behaviors for anything. So if I want to go to the Olympics and I want to sign up for a coach to get me to the Olympics, he's going to first say, well, have you done the basics? Do you eat properly? Do you sleep, get plenty of sleep, water? Do you exercise? He's not even going to consider bringing me on board until I've learned how to do the basics. I'm going to have to go to somebody else to teach me how to run and jump and throw, all the things I need for, let's say, decathlon in the Olympics. So first thing I want to do is emulate, look at how mature I am as an athlete, and then I'll know when I'm good enough to actually pay for a coach that's willing to take me on to get me to the Olympics, right? Think decathlon, 10 different things. 10 different things there. There's similar number for we get to the maturity model. So it's a way of measuring yourself against what's good, what we know works. So we'll go there next. This is a simplified version of the diagram. This is for developers. I don't want to shock their socks off. It's not all about their activities. Design, implement, and verify. It's pretty obvious what those refer to. That's developer space. And I let them know right up front, that's where I'll spend time with them. But they need to know that governance exists. They need to know where to find policies for the company. If you're going to follow a password policy, you better know where that policy is and how to get there. So that's what I help them understand. They need to know where they're going to need to get education. Where do you go for learning secure coding or secure architecture, and how that fits into the whole life cycle. Metrics. They need to know what they're being measured against, right? It's easy to fail goals if you don't even know what your goals are. So if you're going to have a mature program, people like me and others in security need to help set those with maybe management in the dev space, but developers need to know what's happening out there so they know there's a whole life cycle around their software products. Hope you're tracking this. And in operations, DevSec ops, well, ops is ops, right? You're running software, vulnerability management, all the other stuff you'd expect. Again, if you have questions, stop me or we'll go back. But my goal is to overall get the concept across to you, right? So I'm actually here. This presentation is all about selling this journey, getting them to go on this journey, which ultimately means convincing their management because they need air cover to have time to do this. I already said they don't have time, right? We all heard that. I think you all know developers don't have time. So they're not going to get time because you convince them. They're only going to get time because you also convince their management. It's like, do you understand unplanned work is expensive? Yes. Do you understand the security is really annoying because we keep coming back with, here's a bug late in the process. It now means unplanned work. I hate that. They'll tell you. Everybody hates that. So I said, look, I got a way to make it better. You're going to have to teach your people to do this stuff sooner, and we'll help them find and fix it when they're doing the coding, right? Similar to the gentleman yesterday who gave a talk on similar overlapping concept, right? So this whole thing I do with them, I did it as a proof of concept. I actually did it for my graduate degree year before last, yeah, whatever. Walk through a number of teams, and I have more and more teams come to me saying, can we do this? They actually are interested because they understand they don't know how to get from here to there. Everybody's saying you need to get better, but better at what? How, right? So I contend, and my experience is that working with a team one-on-one, I got to tell you, the maturity model, I love it. it's great, but it was designed for a whole organization or a whole section of an organization. So how good is, like Ford Motor Credit where I work, how good are they? How good are the automobile software people? How marketing, sales, big organization, for me it is at least, thousands. How good are they? That's what really the model's for, to track at a high level metrics and growth. I'm saying the same thing works with assessment on an individual team basis with a different goal. You set a different goal in mind, and I'll explain as we get there, you'll see. So it's very much establishing a trust. One security person or advocate, whatever, to working with the team, getting them on board. It also lets you build that advocate group, because when you get 12 people in a team, you find the one person that asks the questions. Says, wait a minute, explain this to me again. Oh, that's really interesting. I never knew that. You find the person who has that bent for security. You get their name, because that's going to be who you solicit later to join your advocate team that then the AppSec team or the red team, can work with. You find the person who actually cares. You can't just grab and assign somebody. That doesn't work. You got to somebody who wants to learn it, is interested. They're going to show themselves as you walk through this, right? This gives them broad enough, but not super deep, enough you can start to get a hint. Okay, this is the next 6 things I walk through them with. I actually tell them, there's a little joke come up, but we go through a little assessment of where they're at now. We've got to understand 2 things. How much they know and don't know, so I adjust all the things I do. Think agile, minimum viable product. I got to adjust my minimum viable product to something that actually generates value. If they don't know what the heck I'm talking about, I'm going to lose them in 10 minutes. So you got to figure out how much they know and don't know and adjust the learning part of it to meet the audience, right? Remember, like I said, my jeans, and I'll take off my hat now, but my wild socks, you have to think, I'm a developer. How do I make you comfortable that you're willing to work with me and trust me on this, right? So you have to figure out where they're at. Meet them there, right? So we go through basics, teaching about it. I actually walk through an assessment. My time, I go back and compile results. The spreadsheet pretty much does it all. You go back and I do a review meeting with them, and basically, where do they want to go with it, right? That's the high-level view of this. We'll walk in a little deeper. Everybody's heard the joke of a pre-meeting meeting in bureaucracies. Well, I joke with them because it seems like I'm doing a pre-meeting meeting, but actually I'm warming them up to the fact that if I don't know what they know, then I can't adjust to them. And I also can't make sure at the end, that they actually got value out of it. Because even if they don't go on the journey, you got a chance to educate them on some stuff. And it's gonna grow legs over time as they start to learn the terms and things they should be doing. They may come back to you and say, can I learn about that particular feature? Okay. I gave you before and after. I do that with them. Why? Back to my transparency, right? I think it's very important. If I tell them exactly why I'm doing everything, then I can bring them along and they'll start to accept me as they'll trust me. Here's the one that'll knock your socks off. I tell them the results are for them. I don't even store the name of the file with their team name on it. I ask them for a letter and number combination, random, and I associate it in my spreadsheet, store it that way, and say, I will only talk to you and your supervisor. And if you all agree that your manager, one level up, has to be involved to go farther, okay, but that's it. This is not to be graded on. This is not to beat you with as a stick. It's not to say, why don't you know this stuff? This is to say, hey, there's things you haven't learned yet. Let me help you figure out what they are. Look in the mirror and then plan what you might want to do with it, right? That's my approach. A whole lot of trust building goes on. And it takes a few hours before they want to trust you in most cases, right? Just reality. You want to make sure there's actually benefits to them at the end. You're sucking out their time. Always remember that. I'd put a deck like this together, right? The first time I did it, okay, a few hours, maybe a couple more for practice, and I start presenting to them. Worst case, it's 6 or 7 hours of my time. I get 12 people out there. I'm doing 3 hours with it, right? Do the math, 36 hours of company time. That's a whole lot of waste if I'm not making good use of their time for them. They have to get the benefit, not me. Okay, I get benefit long-term because all the better written software means the detect response. There's a surprise. Their lives are easier. When they get better logging, when the software has less vulnerabilities, when it's patched better, now you can find the odd thing that sticks out better. Now you know what normal is. Now their stuff's more resistant to attack. There's less things for the red team to find out where they're going to poke the eye of the developer. Nothing personal. But yeah, it actually is a positive cycle for everybody as they get better at what they do. So this is the exploded version out there. Sonny put out there. You can find it online for SAM. If you look at OWASP up and look for SAM, you'll find all the stuff. It's all interactive online. It's a great set of tools. And it's created by security and developers together. Total collaboration of stuff that makes sense. Terms they can understand. Not a bunch of security mumbo jumbo, to be honest. Every one of these is a topic. Every one of these you can drill down in, right? So I introduce it here, but the next session I do with them, which is half hour to an hour, I actually make them all open their browsers, go to the model, choose one, click in, drive down. So I will make them pick one, and I'll take them to like threat assessment, have them pick one, and go to a threat model, have them click there, bring up the actual discussion. See, it'll tell you exactly what you expect to get from improving this. What is threat modeling meant to accomplish? What does it fix, right? What does it help for the life cycle? It's all there in black and white in easy to understand terms that are developer friendly. That's the significant piece, right? It's holistic. You see that again, end to end, right? Here's an example. So when I drill down, here's what the questions look like on the assessment side. There's a picture of the model. I encourage you all to go click through it, try some sampling out there, easy to use. And you get literally a one-sentence answer for what's the benefit of doing this, right? How much better can you get for management than one sentence, a summary, right? Black and white. So there's threat modeling. There's 3 different levels of maturity. So there's the questions, right? And you click on one of them, and it actually gives you the choices of what your answers might be, and it'll calculate in real time in your spreadsheet, building up what it would look like. So again, I will walk through this with them, teach them about it before we do the assessment, and then we walk through the assessment together, pausing wherever they don't understand something to explain it. Most of them have not seen maturity models. That's my experience. You have a much higher number here in security of seeing it than I'm used to seeing. I'm usually used to a group of 10, 12 people. 2 have seen maturity models, 3 at the max. So you end up having to explain, right? I don't expect you all to become Olympic athletes in the decathlon, but I expect you to improve enough that you feel you're doing your job well, that maybe your health is improved, or maybe you compete in a local 5-10K for fun with your family, right? Maybe that's your goal, whatever. When you think about athletics, same thing. They need to figure out what makes sense for them. Why do I think everybody doesn't need to be a 3? Okay, go ahead.
So do you start with the baseline with the teams to sort of show them where they are from a maturity?
That's where we're going. That's exactly, we'll go there. But they need to understand what this is about even before I reveal the results. That's a good question. Hang on to it. One more.
And also, do you do this maturity assessment per product, or how do you actually tackle it?
I do it per team because for us, we're a PDO, product design organization. So a product will have a team. A team may have multiple products. But it's not likely that they're going to do security requirements by having, let's say, abuse cases, right? You can go out and look that up in OWASP. You don't know what those are. That's really how you get from theoretical security stuff into real security requirements that a coder can use in their backlog. That's what abuse cases are about. The evil user stories, a lot of names for it. It's not likely they're going to do it for one product and not the other, unless they're in a growing stage. You have to be agile in your whole way you handle this. There is no easy button. There's pain and time and cost to this. But I argue if you don't do this with them, if they don't go on this journey, what's going to happen is at some point management is going to say enough, a breach happens, or the CAO comes to change, and somebody's going to say, you all get better now, and I'll give you 6 months, start taking the courses, get better. And I know that won't work. I will tell you now that will fail. That will crash developer culture. The one guy up there before said that they had a breach, so that's why they had bandwidth for 6 months to stop shipping product, right? SolarWinds. Most companies can't do that. I cannot go to our CEO. I met him a couple times. I got a lot of respect for Jim Farley. Jim, I am worried for the consequence of the risk of software. I'd like you to slow down the development of the next vehicle for 6 months. They may let me pick up my coat before sending me the HR to walk me out the door. I'm not even sure they'd give me that much long. They're nice people, so they probably would. But it's just not practical, right?
Unless an incident happens, maybe.
Huh?
Unless an incident happens.
Well, an incident gives you reason, impetus, but you still need to think about the business. Remember I mentioned that quote from CISO, from Cisco? You gotta be pragmatic. This is not about making the world perfectly secure. It's about making the business manage risk, right? It's about getting the threats that matter most to the things that matter most. So in your example, I like it. You get 3 products. One of the products is the pricing model for the not yet revealed new car we sell. Sounds like there's a lot of IP there. And it's also going to include a form the customer fills out to sign up for that car. Sounds like some PII, maybe an SPII. That sounds like a pretty serious product you want secure. The other one they're working on is, after you release after you release the car, we want an online thing where you can download replacement manuals that you get in the glove compartment. Well, what's the risk level for that? Do I care as much that you do all this work for that? Absolutely not. I don't want you to become a vector to pivot off of, right, for a red team, but most cases, you're just not my emphasis. You have to remember, I come from a world, I can't tell you how many apps we have. We have somewhere between 4,000 and 5,000. Asset management is not easy in a 100-year-old company. And if I told you how many versions of what we have, you'd cry for me, right? I'm not Argentina, but you'd still cry for me. So the reality is you have to adjust to the business world and to developers who are serving the business world. So my hard news is we get the tough work, and it's soft skills, it's people. Yes, you have to know your technology. Yes, absolutely. Every time there's a developer who doesn't want to believe me about that finding from a DAS report or something else, it means I have to come alongside and explain it to them. It also means that when the other team that runs SaaS says, you must fix this, and I look at it, it's like the risk is not there. I understand how you would exploit this. It's not likely to happen. This does not need to be a critical that they fix in XYZ time. This is actually a medium at worst. Let's reset. I have to argue on the developer's behalf, and I do that. Take me with you. I will take on any security person inside Ford. They know that. And I will bury you in data of why my ranking of medium is legitimate and yours of critical that you just blindly took from the vendor is not acceptable. Right? It has to be, back to your thing, right? Everything's prioritized. And that's a classic security person mistake. If you don't risk prioritize things, you're spending resources the wrong place. And you're going to miss the ones that really matter. That's the hard part. And then you'll fix some little thing that will never be exploited. Okay. So I won't go farther in here. You can get the slides later. We go back into this part. That's what, oops, she's not even looking. What can I do? No, just joking. I'm dramatic because the more I keep you laughing at me and engaged, the more you remember, right? I've learned, there's a lot of teaching skills I know, right? And if I don't keep you highly engaged, changing stuff, timbre, voice, approach, everything, some of you are going to pass out sooner or later. So the spreadsheet gives you all this. So this is exactly the point. I will walk down this with them. This is actually what you get, but I'll say, which of these do you want to work on? Maybe you got a 1.75 here, secure architecture. So maybe that's a good enough starting point for where they're at or the company's at. Maybe that's okay. But the fact that they don't know anything about, their education, well, not know something, but their education is pretty generic. They don't really know. There's no, if they're Java programmers, they don't know any Java stuff. They just know, oh yeah, I know about cross-site scripting and why that, what's top 10. Beginning education. That's not even warm-up, really. Yeah, that's not going to get them where they need to go. They need how to fix their stuff that they run into. Am I losing anybody? If you don't agree, raise your hand and say you're full of it. I won't ever be offended. Tell me where I'm wrong. Speak up. So I look at this and say, pick 2, pick 3. No, I tell them to pick. I tell them to talk to me about it. I will coach them. This is never throw it over the fence. That's the Manny and CISO discussion I had for 20 minutes last time. I monopolized them. I've met them before, but absolutely, you don't throw things over the fence. But they have to own this. So when you give your kid, if any you're a parent, more and more responsibility, sometimes you'll let them pick which chores they're going to do to get them started on the responsible path of doing chores. You don't say, well, I expect by the time you're 18 to be doing these 10 things, balancing your checkbook, knowing how to manage credit. You don't go to your 10-year-old and say, well, you better do all these things. Let's see if you understand it all. Let's start working on it. No, you wouldn't get there. What can you do? You pick 2 or 3 things you think you can do and start to trust them with those things, right? You don't trust them with things where, let's say, if they're 6, you don't trust them with a pet. When they don't feed the pet's going to die, right? You just don't. You choose things. If you get them a pet, you get them a hermit crab, not a rabbit, right? You get them something that's resilient, right? Think of software, resilient software, right? So you pick things that get them there. Because your goal is to get them to own the journey, to get on the journey. Now, hang on. Get on that journey together so they're making progress. Go ahead.
And just a step back here, when you say they, you mean the security champions of this?
I mean development team. At this point, you might have. I won't even have. In my case, I don't have a champion necessarily. I want to develop that, Long term, I believe that's the only way to success. I want just the normal developers to start owning up to the fact they don't know this, and it's worth knowing because these are from the experts around the whole world, right? So they need to start participating. So they need to say, which of these do I care about? You just click on a few, and they'll pick some things. Oh, that I didn't know. One of the classic ones they do is security requirements. How many people have gotten this line when you ask them about their development? Your security requirements. You have them? Oh, yeah, I've got them. I got them from the architect. And what are they? Oh, yeah, I have identity, and they don't use these words. Identity and access management. I know who's allowed to access my app and what they're allowed to do. I'm done. That's their security requirements. Well, how many people believe that's actually even halfway to what you need for secure code? Anybody? 25%? 15? How about 5? Could we agree that a good identity and access management is maybe 5% of the current security requirements? You see my point, right? But that's what developers think because that's all they've been told, right? They have this architect that said, oh, here's the step that says do security. Oh, yeah, we've done it now. We're done. Moving on. They know nothing about secure coding. They know nothing about abuse case. So guess what? You know that field? Every time the customer is entering data in a field about themselves, is that going to a database? Are you parameterizing that into a query? Which usually protects you pretty darn well. Or are you sucking it into a field that gets sent over to SQL? There goes your table, right? I mean, how fast does it find for the gentleman in the back, who's the speaker? How long does it take you to find a SQL Server injection and take advantage of it and show them you could have wiped out their table? 5 minutes, 10 minutes?
Pretty fast. You rarely find it in production, but when you do, it's pretty
Dramatic. So the moral of the story is learn about this and how it works so you can use that drama to get them on board. But they have to own this. I believe that with lots of passion if you can't figure that out. It can't be us telling them to get healthy. The doctor only has so much impact on their patient who's not healthy, right? It's often the spouse and the kids, like I'm now a grandfather and I'll be blunt. Two of my daughters don't have fathers. So they will get there's no grandfather that way for them at all. And the other one, her grandfather had some serious health issues. She came out and said, you need to hang around. So I am saying that's a responsibility I have. I want to be a mentor to future offspring. I want to share my beliefs, my faiths, my logic, how to approach life, how to be a man for my son, how to be, respect for women, how to have my daughter, my granddaughter, my grandson, how to behave in a way that works well within the family and their lives. So I literally say, I need to start thinking about my health a little more. A little more than the doctor told me. It means a lot more because now my daughter-in-law said, you better. It sounds funny, but we're only the doctor here. It's all we can ever do is tell them, here's the symptoms. If they want to get healthier, they need to want to do it. So picking the items, sometimes doctors do that, right? You need to get more exercise, sleep better, stop drinking, stop smoking, whatever. I'm not trying to pick anybody. This is not me offensive. And sometimes they say, well, I know you can't do all that. Which one are you going to work on now until the next time I see you, right? I mean, doctors will do this sometimes, right? Same thing. Let them pick something. They can get started. Was that offensive? I hope not. Didn't need to identify anybody. I could do better on what I eat. Sleeping too. Got to set reality here. If you read all the SAM stuff, nobody expects people to be a 3. There's very few companies that are 3 across the board. You don't need to be. Back to the marketing sales one. Marketing sales site often doesn't need to be super mature. The Ford Credit site that's managing customers that actually have loans that are tied to automatic withdrawals had better be locked down perfectly wonderful. So they need to be 3 for some of these things, absolutely, because there should be no ambiguity. The pen testing crowd, should never be able to get to alter their fiscal information and steal their PI. Because that's, for a fiscal institution, that's like anathema. Okay. So this is totally stolen slide at the bottom, right? Critical success factors. If you don't get buy-in from management, I hinted about that, you're not going to get anywhere. Got to be risk-based, back to pragmatic, right? Got to be transparent. These people don't know, and they don't know what they don't know, so you have to help them to the education. You have to help. I curate content. I go to Pluralsight, choose courses. I will watch every course I think is good. I have contractors, so literally go out and YouTube. I do this in my own time, sorry. You may have time at work, I don't. So I will watch hours of videos, figuring out which ones work for developer, which waste their time, which is theoretical, which is reality, which are shorten, make it bite-sized if I can, and then curate the content. So I'll be honest, my L&D people wanted to create AppSec lists. And they send me, oh, I created a list for you. 43 hours, it's like not happening. You know, I chose things, started at 12 hours and cut it down so I could get it to 8 for a year's worth of viewing, right? I mandate, I have to think like they do. They don't have time. Their time is precious. I need to do it in their eyes, right? You have to help some of this happen. And again, if you don't get to that automate stage, I mean, how many people here think developers will have any change of behavior if you don't offer automation for any kind of testing tools? Anybody think they'll go there from manual steps? No takers? Okay, well, that's pretty obvious then, right? And management visibility. You get successes, you need to advertise, not that, I hate to say this, this is a human soft skill. You don't say I succeeded. Show the team succeeded. Let them win. Let them take the success. Tell management how good this team has been done. You'll get carried along for the ride. I tell them when you have, I'll go to the next slide. Oops, let me go back one. I tell them, yeah, do their gap analysis, choose the things, come up with a plan, how many you can do this 6 months or the next year, work on it. Own the change. I tell them when you get to success, absolutely invite me back for cake and cookies and coffee. I know I don't need cake, right? But anyhow, I tell them to invite me back because I want them to remember I am part of their team in an extended way. There is more growth. Keep involving me and I will help them go farther. It's not that I want the cake and cookies. I want them to remember that it's a collaborative sport, right? Even if they've made progress after I sent them down the path, come back, I'll help them some more. Just like a coach. Oh, you mastered the javelin. Well, the hammer is a whole different skill set. You're still throwing, but it's something very different. So come back. Not you master the javelin, you're good enough to compete, I'll teach you the hammer, right? The Decathlon reference there. And then my last slide. And we'll go to question, 2 minutes, wow, I usually do this in 30, so we started late. So last thing, right? All hands on deck, this is culture change, this is all the people. So this means the architect, the product owner, product designer, I drag in the supervisor, they all have to be there. Even if they're not all technical, they need to understand what this journey is about and why it's important. If any of them aren't there, it loses import, it loses criticality, it loses the impetus, and they suddenly won't have time for it. It just sort of happens. Been there, seen that, done that, right? I stole some Ford stuff at the bottom, but they have to understand there's a lot of disruption here, right? You've got to face current reality, you got to face the fact you're going to disrupt things. It's not always going to be comfortable, but you got to rinse and repeat and build your confidence over time. Anyhow, progress over time. It's enough said. So 1 minute left for questions. I got a couple in the middle, so go ahead.
I just got recently handed over the DevSecOps topic within the bank
Mm-hmm.
that I'm working for. And you mentioned soft skills, so that boils down to communications as well.
Yes.
I'm wondering how do you approach, because now there are a lot of tribes and a lot of development teams within an IT department environment. How do you approach them in terms of communication and keeping them up to date with this? I guess that you do this assessment every now and then, if it's a regular exercise. But from a practical standpoint, how do you approach them, let's say, on a regular basis?
Right.
Keep up with the security and DSC topic.
I haven't reached that point of regular repeated, but I'll deal with the question nevertheless. Culture change, people change. I don't think that'll shock anybody. You want a major change that maybe they don't want, right? You're going to find 10% of the people will be enthusiastic about a change, understand it. You get those people on board. You always start with only those people. You get your poster child of success. You get management on board to grow that, which means by then you better have some more people working with you because, or in my case, too many teams. I can't do them all. Get the other 80% moving in the right direction. The last 10% you totally ignore until most 80% have been there, and then you point out to management, we're making great strides. Look at those 10%. Take care of it. It's not your problem. They have a problem. Management's there for a reason. Let them handle the 10% that doesn't want to play ball. Okay? Yes, soft skills. I'm very direct. You kind of figure that out. I'm from New Jersey, right? I pull no punches. People like that and don't like that. I try to adjust. But security people, I'm especially obnoxious because I expect them to toe the line, you know? I push them mercilessly. So that's time. That's it. So I actually push people to get communication skills. I actually coach other people on how to do presentations. I present with other people all the time. You find people that like to present are good, expand that skill. Get other people, if they have to present, make sure they learn how to. I was going to say a joke in the beginning. That's the last thing I'll say is, I was going to tell you all, I'm going to read the slides. You're all good with that? I'm just going to read the slides. And nobody'd say yes. It's like, so don't do that to your customers. Don't read that report to them. I mean, come on, how many people you've seen up to VP level, they read the slides. I won't put the word in there he's going to use. Don't do that. Did I learn how to, I mean, people say I'm good at presenting. I might be. At work, people, give me kudos. Now, I didn't get there without a lot of work. I study a lot of stuff. I all the time got to like Toastmasters. I look at the top winners for Toastmasters every couple of years, look at the top talks. What do they do that I don't do? What do I do wrong? Every talk I go to, I take notes. He screwed up. I better not do that. Look at what the audience reacted. I don't want to do that. That worked. I'm going to steal that. I steal quotes all the time, Anyhow, I'm done. Any last question? I mean, does it resonate with anybody here? That's what I care. I don't care about me, kudos. I want to know, does this help you in any way? Give you an idea, at least how to start.
Especially with the assessment model, yes.
I like how you said pre-assessment. Call it pre-assessment.
Yeah.
Because assessment can be scary.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm getting graded.
Right.
Down, you just take that off the top and go, this is just to help you out, and I'm only reporting to you to help you understand where you are.
And I'll tell you, it takes me an hour and a half, 2 hours into my like 4 or 4.5 hour engagement with a team to get to the point they actually believe me, that I'm not there to shake a stick at them and tell them they're doing bad, and I actually do want to help them. They don't cross that fence easily, right? Security doesn't have a great reputation with developers. It takes a lot to win them over. And you wouldn't think of me being so direct I do, but I largely do. Who knows? Miracles happen all the day. So thanks for your coming. Appreciate it.